Subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to get all the latest updates. India has officially crossed 1 million cases of the COVID-19, 1.1 million to be exact, with Sunday showing a single-day spike of 40,000 cases. Yet the government continues to argue that there is no national community transmission, even though there might be community transmission in local areas. And the government is pointing to the fact that the fatality rate has now fallen below 2.5%, making it among the lowest in the world. When we step back and look at what's happening in India's battle against the coronavirus, how should we make sense of the data? What should we be worried about in the coming weeks and months? Joining us now on the program is Dr Jayaprakash Muliyil, one of the country's best-known epidemiologists who has been a health warning voice literally through these last 3 or 4 months. Thank you very much, sir, and good evening to you. If you had to step back and look at the overall situation, here is what it seems. There seems to be a surge in the infection rate, but not in the fatality rate, at least as we understand it, and even accounting for a certain amount of underreporting or a certain amount of undercounting that happens in such cases. First, let me ask you to make sense of the overall situation.
Okay, now classically, we calculate case fatality rate. For example, in tetanus, if 100 patients come with tetanus, 30% will die. Tuberculosis, we have a case fatality. But all refers to cases. Now, in COVID, we have a problem. Not all are cases. Some have disease, others are just minding their own business, and we find they have virus and call them a case. Now, so it should be ideally something called the ratio of infection to mortality, Now, this 10 lakhs is not even that, because it's a mixture of this and that. To ideally examine the issue, you should look at what is the proportion of deaths among infected. Now, how do we get hold of measurement of infection? We can get what is called as a cumulative infection from the sero survey data. So one will be able to estimate if you knew how many totally died. However, even there we have a problem. We do not have this exact estimate of death. Only those who come to hospital and decide to die in hospital are counted. Those who don't, we miss them. So, Barkha, I have a problem here. I can't help you through this because these figures are quite have their deficiencies. But this, even the so-called 1 million cases, it is a gross underestimation of the total number of people infected. So I don't know how to help you out. You are mystified. I am also mystified.
Let me maybe ask you a simpler question. Would it be fair to say that the infection rate in itself should not worry us, because our death rate, even accounting for undercounting, is lower than other parts of the world, even though strangely in India, more young people seem to be dying from this virus than in other parts of the world?
Well, listen, I am an epidemiologist, so I have to follow certain rules. We study mortality patterns in different countries. Everywhere it's the same. Age-specific mortality are parents. Now, what about the total mortality? Let's take a cutoff at 60. Above 60, most of the deaths occur everywhere. And most of the deaths in India, strangely, we have a large number below 60. But India also claims we have a very low mortality. Now, you have to have a convoluted argument. For some reason, below 60 in India are more susceptible than above 60. That is a quite far-fetched argument. The easier argument is to say we are indeed missing out on a lot of over 60 deaths. Period.
So let me hold you to that. You believe that we are then not counting all our COVID related death. We actually saw an admission of this and credit to them in Maharashtra, where the government admitted that it had undercounted deaths as COVID linked, where its death audit committee had counted those with comorbidities as having died from those diseases and not from coronavirus. And we actually found that more than 2,000 deaths had not been counted as COVID deaths and they were then reconciled. Is it your understanding, based on the numbers you're seeing, that we are not fully counting our COVID dead? And by how much could that number be off?
Well, we have to wait for the epidemic to be over. You're only talking about miscounted deaths. There are uncountable deaths. People who decide not to come to a hospital. And for elderly to come to a hospital where there is no bystander next to you is a quite a frightening situation. Okay? And especially when you have comorbidities and things like that. Hence, we are probably missing out a lot of about 68 deaths. And I don't think we will be able to figure it out later on when you measure excess mortality during COVID time.
So, sir, when the government says, as it has today, that the fatality rate has fallen below 2.5%, that is not a number that you necessarily believe in.
No, it's a number I do not understand. It's my weakness. It's not government's fault. I don't understand.
Explain that. Explain that.
Well, for everything, there's a numerator and a denominator. Now, for example, here you go and look for cases in terms of susceptible, sorry, asymptomatic. If you do a good job, you get a lot of it. So that is a very fluctuating number. Okay? And then you put a lockdown, and many people can't come to hospital to get admitted. So all these things are there. You know, a lockdown is one deterrent from patients reaching hospital. The others are threat of quarantine for the rest of the family. There are actually places in India where they put a lock around the house so that people won't get out. This is the zeal with which we sometimes fight the virus, which is not necessary. This is not that bad a virus. Okay? The point is, it all came together and it frightened me. And I can understand. It is fearsome to see people falling dead all over the place. But now, after the experience so far, we should know how best to handle it. We can't contain. Period. Virus will multiply. It'll get transmitted in Indian conditions. Okay? That is a fact. What can we do? We can take care of people who fall sick. So if it changes, instead of being virus finders, we should find disease finders and take care of them.
But if you do not understand this 2.5% or under it, as the government says, fatality rate, it also means, in my understanding, that you do not agree with the government claim that fewer Indians are dying from this virus than elsewhere in the world. I think what you're saying is we simply do not know.
I don't know, but you know one thing. Being an Indian, I'm a little partial to Indian statistics. So I keep asking what are the possible reasons why there should be a lower mortality. And I can't find much. One thing is there, we can adjust for age differences. We are younger, that is one thing. We can even adjust, probably later on we just figure to what extent morbid obesity contributes to death. in India, we definitely have less than, say, in the United States. And I also think, being a tropical country, in rural areas, our vitamin D levels are very high. So I am searching for to help the statistics out, but I don't think we are anywhere close to the truth.
What about the theory propounded by some that our exposure to zoonotic viruses in general is more than other countries and therefore we may be hardier people? Or the theory that all of us have been vaccinated as children with the MMR vaccine and maybe there's something in there that's helping us take on the lethality of this virus?
Well, they are interesting hypotheses. What you have to do is every scientific hypothesis is scientific because it can be falsified. And you look for reasons why it should. For example, MMR is 100% vaccine coverage we have in Europe. Okay. But they also had high mortality.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know to what extent this interaction is there. Many immunologists are talking about it. It is very good to speculate because that's where scientific ideas come from. But today, we have no evidence.
The 1.1 million cases that you believe is a serious underestimation of the spread of the virus is in part because so many people are asymptomatic. So many people have been infected, and we simply do not know how many those are. Is it your belief that the ICMR must put in the public domain the findings of its serological survey, which could give us a sense of how widespread the infection is? Why do you think we still do not officially know the results of this serological survey?
Yeah, I've also wondered about it. And in fact, I thought some of the results are quite exciting, with very high seropositivity, which kind of gives you sort of promise soon we will come to the end of this miserable epidemic. So I would have thought they would have published it faster, and I am also associated with this virus, and for some strange reason they have delayed it. And this information, I think, will be out. I think I know it has been cleared. It's just on the way to press. Trains are slow these days, so it will reach. It will come out.
But you helped design this survey, and I'm sure you have some access to the data. Do you think that there is politics in this? Governments panic because they think people will panic. Suppose you come out and say 30%, 40% of India is infected. And I think you at some point believed half of India would be infected by the time we're done with this. Do you still believe that?
Of course. And there are two options. Either you follow my line of and believe only half of India will get infected, or don't believe in herd immunity and look forward to the entire India getting infected. Which side would you go by? Okay, and herd immunity seems to be working, at least in Mumbai big slums. So let us hope you don't have to have every Indian getting infected. Herd level will kick in and we can call it a day.
Can you explain what could sound like a contradiction? Because on the one hand, Dr. Muliyil, you say that we are underestimating the numbers. We are not done with this virus yet. On the other hand, you seem to believe that herd immunity is making itself felt, at least in pockets of India. So what are we saying then? Are we saying that we are at a stage where the virus is spreading, but we are immune to it? It's not affecting us so badly. What are we actually saying?
Oh, I thought these two statements are very consistent. That
But not
1
everybody
million is an
understands the science that you
yeah,
do.
1 million is an underestimate because them already infected are huge. Let me give an example for you. We did a survey and found in Dharavi 36% of the population are infected. Okay. Dharavi as a population, let's say 1 million. It's a little less now because so many people have gone home.
Yeah. Yeah.
36% of 1 million is 3.6 lakh in one slum area. Now, where is that? And when you're saying India totally 10 million, 1 million, 10 million, 1 million case, that doesn't make any sense, right? So I'm saying, yes, the infection is much more than we know. In fact, it's all over. That is number one. We have no method of controlling it. All our methods of control fail. So what do? Wring your hands in despair? No. There's a silver lining in all this misery. That is the herd immunity development. We are not chasing herd immunity. The herd immunity is chasing us. That is important to remember.
But there was a time when I know I've read earlier statements of yours when you believed that 60% of India would have to be infected before herd immunity could develop. Now we don't actually know how much of India is infected. We don't have a real data for that, a real number for that. What makes you believe that herd immunity could be developing in the Indian population?
Back to Dharavi. 2 months ago, or not, 6 weeks ago, when we measured Dharavi, it was 36%. That is, 36% is below my expected 60%. Okay, and secretly, actually, for a place like Dharavi with such a population density, I personally thought we may require a 70% herd. But within a month, the Dharavi cases crashed from 200 something to single digit. Now, what made that happen? Okay, and the only answer is herd immunity. There is no other answer because the population, more than half, are still susceptible. But the virus is not spreading. What is the secret? And that is the way herd immunity works. I'm a little surprised that my 60% was wrong because I think they seem to be sort of starting to work even at a lower percentage. Now, it is all guesswork from newspaper reports because we don't have published data, right?
But
So
you know,
I'm
sir,
making
but I spent some time in Dharavi, and I just want to give you two possible points that I observed. One is that there were people whose COVID positivity was only emerged after their death, by which time other people in their family, etc., had got the illness. The other is that a number of migrant workers who lived in Dharavi actually left. They left for their villages. Now, what we do not know is the impact of the mass mobility of people, whether moving into rural areas or what happens when, let's say, they come back to Dharavi to resume their lives if they do come back. Are these factors that worry you? I've also spent considerable time in rural India. In rural India, sir, nobody is wearing masks. Nobody is even taking basic precautions. And right now, we do not have any evidence of the virus having moved into rural India, but we could be ahead of the curve, so to speak. We may not know what's happening in rural India.
I know. And I think we have only one survey to go by, again, the ICMR survey. This information has been published, and that was turned out to be, when we did it at that time, 0.73% are infected. Very low percent. But mind you, that 7.73% was spread all over India. And I was quite surprised. And I thought maybe it's because this migrant worker movement and things like that. I have no clue. But I thought the spread will be slower than this. But India spread was faster than I anticipated. That is, once you reach a village, then it will spread there also. So my problem is, in Dharavi, the, there is considerable work going on to reduce transmission. But it traveled all the way from 0 to 36%. Then it crossed somewhere 40 or so,
Yeah.
it started. To me, there is a solution to India's problem. And I hope that prediction that it will arrest the transmission to significantly in big cities will change our attitude to the disease. Our fear will subside. In rural area, it will smolder. Most villages will not even see one death. Okay, So it won't be a panic stations. We are to some extent perturbed by the massive number of people getting admitted, no place in ward, number dying. They talk about dead bodies piling. That's all frightening. Okay? Now remember, every year India we lose 10 million people. We don't cry over it. We are used to it. Okay? But when it all happens suddenly, it's quite frightening.
But that was going to be my next question. If you believe that there's that you're confident that herd immunity is beginning to develop in sections of the Indian population, is it time to reduce the singular focus on COVID-19? I ask this because among the patients and the families I have reported on are non-COVID fatalities that we are not talking about, that we forget in this country that 3,000 people die from cancer and tuberculosis every single day. And the official death count of COVID is still hovering under 27,000 or thereabouts. Even if you assume that we're nowhere close to the truth, there are much fewer deaths than from other illnesses. So where should our health system begin to when and where should it begin to reprioritize its focus on COVID-19?
So basically, we have to slowly reopen. And I say slowly, this is to keep people peaceful. First of all, I would advise ICMR to focus on these clusters that we have all over, where high levels of positivity is indicating low levels of cases. If that is it, we now shift from running around, isolating people, quarantining people. Can't do that. In other words, we have gone beyond the stage of containment. What we should do now is focus only on patients. Those who have symptoms, test them, treat them. Today, we can reduce mortality considerably by giving them health care. And I'm not talking about ventilators and things like that. Even
Yeah.
some steroids should change the course of clinical illness remarkably. So I think that can be made available in every little shallow cost of that will make a huge difference.
But you said one thing. You said we are beyond the phase of contact tracing and containment. Yet the government, for some reason, does not officially admit to community transmission. Randeep Guleria of All India Medical Institute even today said there might be local community transmission, but there's no national community transmission. Do you agree with that, or do you believe that we are well past actually community transmission?
I think certain areas like Northeast, I'm not very good with the data. But the interesting thing was, which place had the first community transmission? Kerala. They declared community transmission.
Yes.
I think many people believe to say community transmission is to admit defeat. Okay, there is no fight. There is no way you have any ego problem with virus. Virus doesn't even notice you. You have to say this fellow now has reached a stage where we have to start ignoring him and focus on patients.
Yeah, but can I ask you, if you believe, because you believe that the numbers will surge. Epidemiology has never been under so much focus. There are those like you who believe 1.1 million. It doesn't even begin to tell you the story. There are others like Ramanan Lakshmi Narayan or others who forecast figures like 200,000 cases a day. We're already at 40,000 a day this Sunday. Do you believe we're looking at figures like that in the near future?
The questionnaire number of what is the definition of a case.
Yeah.
If you add up all the subclinical, I suppose that will be. I am going to suggest forget it. It's tiring. It
Yeah.
doesn't get us everywhere. Every now and then we'll do serosurvey.
Yeah.
Okay? And then we'll know, yeah, it's climbed it. Okay? There's no point knowing who has got the virus and putting the name in the newspaper. I mean, that is not a good habit.
Yeah.
It's not decent behavior.
Yeah.
So let's get to do medicine, okay, and give back to medicine. And let's open up the hospital. We are closing down Seal Hospital because there was a COVID patient visited or one staff got sick.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. We keep them open. We have to really go back on many of these things we did out of fear. Okay? And if we are still afraid of a virus, then not even God can help us.
Would you advocate the reopening of schools and colleges? Because, this bothers me that we have opened almost everything but our places of education. But we can't get parents of children to agree. It isn't just the government. You have parents resisting this. That fear persists. But airlines have opened, flights have opened, and there is no evidence that since domestic flights have opened, there's any surge in the cases of those traveling. Would you say it's time to open schools?
Oh, yeah, I have no arguments about it. But the wishes of the parents you have to consider. The fear is natural. But in public health, it's all a matter of winning people over. It's not government orders. Okay? So, wait for the crash in big cities. Give a little more time. It's going to happen in a few weeks' time. And people will feel comfortable. And say, I think things are okay. Okay? At that time, start open. I don't think we should need any more conflicts. We need to win people to our side.
But sir, how will you win people to your side when the infection rate keeps surging? What data will convince them?
The infection rate is not surging because something we did. It is the behavior of the virus. Okay? So we can't do anything about it. In public health, there is an important rule. If you can't do something, then it is not of any public health importance. You understand? What do you do? People are growing gray when they go old age. If you can't do anything about it, leave it alone. It's not a public health issue. So on and so forth. So this rise is typical of a virus. In fact, the word exponential rise is something that is ingrained into the DNA of the virus. You can do differently if you behave like people in many parts of Europe. They know how to keep the virus away. But unfortunately, in India, we have two populations. One group are very careful, won't, every time they go out and come and have a bath, sterilize themselves. That is one group. The other group who don't care. The second group is in majority. Okay? And sadly, that's the situation. So we need to appease both groups. The problem is the second group, livelihood depends on coming out.
Yeah.
Okay? So
Yeah.
otherwise they'll be dead anyway.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
So going forward, sir, what would be your advice to the government? Many states have chosen renewed lockdowns. Do you support this?
Well, I don't like lockdown. Okay? Unfortunately, this is what. See, there is an old saying: if a hammer is the only instrument you have, everything in the world will begin to look like a nail. I think the only instrument we have is lockdown. So people keep using it out of frustration. I
Yeah.
think they should calmly look and reassess the whole thing.
Finally, do you believe that the future of medicine or the nature of medicine is going to change? People are now talking about telemedicine, about virtual OPDs, about portable ICUs on wheels. Because as it is, this crisis has thrown up a shortage of health workers, a shortage of critical care beds. Where do you think the future of medicine in this country lies, especially the public health response?
I don't think so. If you have, if I am alive and you are alive, call me for another interview 1 year later. You will see people have forgotten about Corona. I promise you.
That sounds though like the perfect note to end this program on. So I'll make sure I'll call you before the year is out and we'll talk to you again as we monitor this. Thank you so much, Dr. Muliyil. A pleasure talking to you. Learned a lot. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.